how to build bigger biceps of arms. That's what you probably typed in the search, and that's what we're going to go through today, but in the Michael Integra way. And Stanley's got a nice new look, which I think is very feminine.
If anyone wants to send any clothes in for Stanley, then please do. Look up Integra Education, you'll find our address. Thank you. Okay, so we're going to look at the biceps. And the biceps are a collection of muscles. We're not going to go through each one. And if you've watched any of the other videos before, I want you to actually get your anatomy books out, get Atlas of Anatomy, and start to map out where these muscles attach. Why do we need to know where they attach? Well, people start to talk about the position of the shoulder when you're training the bicep. And we need to figure out why are they talking about that? And we need to figure out, is it true? So let's have a look at just three of the muscles today. So if we look at the biceps brachii, that's split into two heads. You've got the long head and the short head. So they both come down and attach onto this bump here on the radius. So if I attach my rope here, that's where they come. And the short head comes up and attaches onto this process. So what you can see here is that down here, that muscle is responsible for the elbow. Up here, that muscle is responsible for this glenohumeral joint, part of the shoulder. And then we've got the long head. So same attachment point. We've got the radial tuberosity. And then it comes up, there's a little groove here, and that's called the bicipital groove. That muscle comes up, and it actually wraps around the top and attaches onto the superior edge of this glenoid fossa. The glenoid fossa is the part on the scapula where the humerus starts to attach. So that muscle comes up and goes around. And then we've got the final one we're going to look at today, this brachialis, which attaches all the way onto this section and comes down and attaches onto the ulna. So looking at this muscle, how many joints does it cover? It's just one. So this is a single joint muscle where these are two joint muscles. So I said at the beginning of the video, we're going to look at why do people start to get into different positions? And these two muscles here might be part of that reason. So if we have a look on Luke, if you want to just step forward for us. So I want you to think, the easy way to find on someone's body where the ulna is, it's the bone that's attached to the bottom here. So this bone here is the ulna. So if he digs in, if you go down, if I dig in, that radius is going to be underneath this little bit of chunky muscle that he's got going on right here. So that muscle comes down, attaches somewhere in there, and then you've got the short head and the long head. So coming back to Stanley, we've got a muscle that's attached here. If we wanted to get this muscle into its shortest position, what would we need to do around the shoulder? Now watch this. If I flex the shoulder, can you see how my rope is getting slack? So that muscle's in a more shortened position there. If we go back, it's getting into a more lengthened position. Okay, so we've been looking at these straight bars and we've been looking at this carrying angle. And so this bar is actually, so if you take your elbows down, straighten your elbows, this bar came with my Cybex machine over there. It's actually too small for him. It's not wide enough, and that's why we actually chose the other bar. If he had to grab hold of this, he's having to go into some sort of shoulder adduction, internal rotation, the axis of this elbow is going all the way in this position. So this is just a pretty shitty bar all round for this exercise. So we've got a couple of options here. We've been looking at this carrying angle, and this carrying angle only affects you when you're in that position. If you start to internally rotate, as in you bring your radius and cross it over the ulna, then that carrying angle now becomes a non-issue. So when you're in this hammer position, or when you're in this sort of reverse elbow flexion bicep curl thingy, this path of motion stays pretty level. It's only when you get into this external rotation. So most gyms have got some sort of EZ bar. We've got this bar that I've had for about 20 years. And this actually allows incremental changes from 45 degrees all the way to that hammer position. So what I want to do, if you grab hold of that, Luke, and right in that position, if you bend your elbows for me, just so everyone can see at home. So he's not perfectly flat there, and we could change the position to get him more into this 45 degrees. What I want to see, and what I want you guys to see is, does this stay in line with this and this when he goes through this movement? So we're looking for any external or internal rotation here. We're looking for any deviation. I don't want him digging his elbows into his ribs because he's trying to figure out how to fit around the bar that doesn't work for him. So if you show us a couple of reps on this. So there's still some issues with this bar. This is fixed in terms of how wide this is. So if you've got someone who's out here with their shoulder or someone that's in here, this is not going to work. But this looks like, in terms of what we've got right now, a pretty good tool.
Feels bad.
Okay, let's have a look at this dumbbell curl. So do a hammer curl, you're in that position already. So you're in a neutral position. And we can see that this resistance profile is kind of matching his strength profile, the same as the barbell, same as the easy bar. And from this camera, what I want you guys to see, there's no deviation here. However, if he twists his arms out, and as he goes down, those dumbbells do come out, so don't let that twist, so keep that. So keep your palm facing forward. Mm-hmm. But the thing is, because he's not on a fixed bar, it allows his dumbbell to travel towards his shoulder, which is what his elbow wants to do. So if you guys are doing this dumbbell, I want you to be thinking about this, because we're trying to maximize this and minimize the forces. So you've got this carrying angle, it starts here, and as you're going up, it's traveling in. So the strength profile is pretty perfect here. Any deviation from this, it starts to become less perfect. It's not a problem, it just is what it is. So we're going to start to have a look at 2 other exercises, because we want to get some of these muscles into a more lengthened position and some of these muscles into a more shortened position. So we're going to look at 2 variants right now. So let's have a look at that short head. So that short head comes in and attaches onto that process that's somewhere in there, comes down and attaches there. So as he takes his arm back, he's lengthening this muscle. Now one thing, and we're going to talk about this when we get to the hamstring, when you start to look at muscles that cross 2 joints, you run into something which is called active insufficiency. And it's where you can get this muscle, because it's spanning 2 joints, into such an extreme degree of length and in the shortened position where you're unable to utilize that muscle. So for this actual exercise, that's his maximum degree of extension that he's got. I'm not sure that we need to go all that way. The extra 5-10 degrees probably isn't sufficient for an extra stimulus. So if you grab hold of that dumbbell for me, and we're just going to have a look from that side. So if you twist your arm out, so we'll keep this position, and then what I want you to do is show me that bicep curl. So we talked about a couple of things, and we talked about respecting this joint, and we talked about the position of this joint, and we talked about how to maximally stimulate this muscle. So we've got all of these, we could figure out, and we could have analyzed, I don't know, like 30 different bicep exercises in 30 different positions. And it gets to a point where it's kind of like, variety is nice, but we just want to be really efficient. And you've got a goal, and you've got a goal in November, so let's be as efficient as possible. So how do we maximally stimulate this muscle? So we've got these various different positions, and we can never take out a muscle. As in, unless we Botox that muscle and it switches off the neurological drive, that muscle's always going to contribute. So we may get into this position and we may think it's a short head bicep exercise. It's still a brachialis, and it's still a long head as well as a short head. And we may get into this position and we may think it's a long head bicep or whatever else is said, but they're all still involved. However, we've got these muscles which are 2 joint muscles. We've got the short head and the long head. So getting into these different positions is a beneficial thing, and especially for you, because we want to maximize the recruitment for that muscle through its full length. So thinking about these different positions here, we could start to look at all of these bicep exercises, and Stanley's pretty good at getting into this position where he's doing this thing with a cable. And then again, we just got to think, where does it attach? It attaches there, it attaches there. Are we gaining anything from doing that? And I'm not sure we are. But what we're actually doing is we're asking this shoulder to have to stabilize this new position, which might be problematic, which means that if this is problematic, your nervous system's going to go, I don't care that you want to move all of this weight. So if we're looking to stimulate muscle, we need to be able to lift the most amount as possible. So we need to create the most stable position possible, which is why I'm going to bias with you with your biceps from going from this 30 degrees of flexion to something like 10, 15 degrees of extension, and that's it. And then thinking about what are you holding onto? If you're holding onto a fixed bar, that dictates where you're going. If you're holding onto a bicep machine, that dictates where you're going. And your elbow is not shaped like that machine or that bar. So the path of motion that you've got available has to be dictated by this to save this joint for the long run, but also to get this muscle doing the most. One of the things that Luke said was when he was demonstrating that straight bar, he could feel this stuff going on here. So this is traditionally called that might be golfer's elbow. We've got tennis elbow, or sometimes people mix them up. I don't think you've ever played golf, have you?
Hell no.
But that might be bicep curl elbow, or that might be some sort of straight bar elbow. The thing that we're trying to do is just stop all of that shit. And the thing that we're trying to do here is we don't need to go to extremes, and we just need to focus on this.
Perfect.
Mm.
Thank you, Michael.
Pleasure.
Integra's got their YouTube channel, that'll be in the description. Make sure you subscribe.
Cool.